I was working the front desk at a hostel in Amsterdam when an American woman came down holding her soaking wet clothes in a plastic bag. She looked furious. She dropped the bag on my counter and said, "Your washing machine is broken. It didn't even turn on." I looked at her receipt. She'd paid for the dryer. She washed her clothes in the dryer for 40 minutes. When I explained this, she just stared at me and said, "Well, they look the same." They absolutely did not look the same. Another guest that same week put dish soap in the washing machine because she couldn't find detergent. The entire laundry room filled with bubbles. It looked like a foam party. She came running to me saying the machine exploded. I asked what she used. She showed me a bottle of fairy liquid. I told her that's for dishes. She said, "Soap is soap." It is not. My friend worked at a laundromat in Berlin. An American guy asked why the machine had so many buttons. She said, "You pick your temperature and cycle." He said, "In America, we just have normal, delicate, and heavy." He pressed every button at once to see what would happen. The machine beeped angrily and refused to start. He told her the machine was discriminating against him. I heard about a woman in Barcelona who hung her clothes on the balcony to dry. Normal, right? Except she hung her bra and underwear on the front-facing railing where the whole street could see. In Spain, you dry clothes on the interior balcony or the back. The neighbor knocked on her door and tried to explain. The American said, "It's my balcony. This is a free country." The neighbor said, "Yes, but we also have eyes." A guy in Prague complained that his Airbnb didn't have a dryer. The host said most Europeans air-dry their clothes. He left a 1-star review saying, "Primitive conditions. No dryer. Had to hang clothes like a pilgrim." The host replied, "Pilgrims didn't have washing machines either." But go off. These stories sound made up. They're not. I've worked in hostels, hotels, and Airbnbs across Europe for 6 years. I've seen Americans struggle with the most basic things, and laundry is somehow always at the top of the list. It's not just washing machines. It's drying racks, detergent, spin cycles, and the entire concept of air drying. Americans arrive expecting giant machines that do everything in 30 minutes. Then they meet a European washing machine that takes 2 hours and leaves clothes damp. Chaos follows. This isn't about making fun of anyone. It's about how we all grow up with different systems. And when those systems clash, the results are comedy gold. So let's talk about all the ways Americans have confused, broken, or declared war on laundry systems around the world. Let me start with the machines themselves. European washing machines are smaller, slower, and way more complicated than American ones. They have touch screens, 15 cycle options, and sometimes they play a little song when they're done. Americans are not prepared for this. I watched a guy in Munich stand in front of a washing machine for 10 minutes trying to figure out how to open it. He pulled the door. He pushed it. He looked for a button. Finally, he asked me for help. I pressed the door gently and it clicked open. He said, "That's it? No handle?" I said, "Yeah, that's it." He shook his head and muttered something about over-engineering. A woman in Copenhagen asked me why the washing machine was in the kitchen. I said that's normal here. She said, "You wash your clothes where you make food?" I explained that it's separate, it's just space efficient. She said, "In America, we have laundry rooms." I said, "In Europe, we have small apartments." She didn't love that answer. One guy in Paris set his wash to 90 degrees Celsius because he thought it meant 90 minutes. He cooked his clothes. Everything shrunk. His jeans looked like doll pants. He came to the front desk asking if we had an iron to stretch them back out. I told him that's not how fabric works. He said, "Well, it should be." Another classic mistake is not understanding the spin cycle. European machines spin clothes really fast to remove water before you hang them to dry. Americans see the spin speed settings and think it's a suggestion. A guest in Vienna set her spin to 0 because she thought it would be gentler on her clothes. She pulled out soaking wet jeans that weighed 10 pounds. She tried to hang them on the drying rack and the whole rack collapsed. She asked if we sold dryers. We did not. My coworker told me about a guy who didn't realize you had to close the detergent drawer. He poured soap in, left the drawer open, and started the machine. Soap and water sprayed all over the laundry room floor. He slipped and fell. When she found him, he was sitting in a puddle of suds yelling, "This is a lawsuit waiting to happen." She asked if he closed the drawer. He said, "What drawer?" Then there's the people who don't use any detergent at all. A woman in Rome washed her clothes with just water because she couldn't read the Italian labels on the soap. She hung everything up and it all still smelled like sweat. She complained to the host. The host asked if she used detergent. She said, "I didn't know which one to use, so I skipped it." The host just blinked at her. I also heard about a guy in Lisbon who tried to wash his shoes in the machine. Normal shoes, like sneakers. The machine started making a horrible banging noise. He panicked and tried to stop it mid-cycle by unplugging it. Water went everywhere. The machine locked with his shoes still inside. He had to wait 2 hours for it to unlock. His shoes were destroyed anyway. He asked for a refund on the machine. The host said, "You broke the machine with your shoes." He said, "Well, I didn't know." Ignorance is not a refund policy. A woman in Brussels asked me why the machine took 2.5 hours. I said that's normal for European machines. She said, "In America, it takes 30 minutes. I explained that European machines use less water and energy, so they take longer. She said, "I don't have 2 hours to wait for laundry." I suggested she plan ahead. She looked at me like I suggested she build the machine herself. One guy tried to wash his clothes at a laundromat in Athens and got confused by the payment system. It required a token. He tried to use a regular coin. It didn't work. He tried another coin. Didn't work. He asked the attendant. The attendant pointed at the token machine. He said, "Why can't I just use money?" The attendant said, "You can. You trade it for a token." He said, "That's extra steps." The attendant said, "It's one step." Another woman in Stockholm put fabric softener in the main detergent slot and detergent in the softener slot. Her clothes came out stiff and sticky. She rewashed them 3 times and made it worse each time. She finally asked for help. I explained the slots. She said, "They should label them better." They were labeled in Swedish and English. Someone in Dublin didn't realize the machine door locks during the cycle. She tried to add a sock she forgot. The door wouldn't open. She pulled harder. Still locked. She called the host, saying the machine trapped her clothes. The host explained it unlocks when the cycle finishes. She said, "What if there's an emergency?" The host said, "Then your laundry waits." The funniest one I heard was a guy in Amsterdam who thought the pre-wash cycle was the only cycle. He ran pre-wash, took his clothes out and hung them up. They were still dirty. He complained that the machine didn't work. The host asked if he ran the full cycle. He said, "I did the wash." The host said, "Pre-wash is just the beginning." He said, "Why is it called pre-wash if it's not the wash?" Fair question, honestly. Now let's talk about drying. This is where things really fall apart. Most of Europe air dries laundry. Most Americans have never air-dried anything in their lives except maybe a swimsuit. The culture clash is real. I've had guests ask me where the dryer is at least 3 times a week. I tell them we don't have one. They look at me like I said we don't have toilets. One woman asked, "So what do people do?" I said, "They hang their clothes." She said, "For how long?" I said, "Until they're dry." She said, "That could take days." I said, "Usually 1 day." She was horrified. A guy in Florence hung his wet jeans on a drying rack in his room and then turned the heat up to maximum. He thought it would dry them faster. It did not. It just made his room a sauna. His roommate came back and said the room felt like a jungle. He said, "I'm drying my pants." The roommate said, "You're creating humidity." He didn't understand the problem. Another classic move is hanging wet clothes over electronics. A woman in Prague draped her wet towel over the TV to dry. Water dripped into the vents. The TV stopped working. She told the host the TV broke on its own. The host checked the cameras and saw her put the towel on it. She said, "I didn't think it would matter." The host said, "Water and electronics don't mix." She said, "It was just a little damp." Someone in Vienna hung her clothes on the radiator and forgot about them. They got so hot they started to smell burnt. The whole hallway smelled like a campfire. Another guest knocked on her door asking if something was on fire. She said, "No, just drying clothes." The neighbor said, "That's not how you do it." She said, "It's working, isn't it?" Technically, yes, but also no. A guy in Lyon asked me if he could use the oven to dry his socks. I said absolutely not. He said, "Why not? It's just heat." I explained that ovens are for food and socks are flammable. He said, "They're cotton. Cotton doesn't burn." Cotton absolutely burns. I did not let him test this theory. I heard about a woman in Madrid who hung her laundry outside on a Sunday. In Spain, some neighborhoods have quiet rules on Sundays. Hanging laundry can be seen as disrespectful. A neighbor told her to take it down. She refused. She said, "It's my laundry. I'll hang it when I want." The neighbor explained it's a cultural thing. She said, "That's a weird rule." The neighbor said, "So is wearing shoes indoors, but you do that too." Another guy in Berlin didn't realize his drying rack was foldable. He tried to shove the whole thing into a closet while it was fully open. It got stuck. He pulled harder. The rack bent. He finally got it out, but now it wouldn't fold or unfold properly. He told the host the rack was broken when he arrived. The host checked and saw it was clearly forced into something. He said, "I don't know what happened." The host said, "The closet knows." A woman in Edinburgh hung her delicate clothes on the indoor drying rack like I told her, but she hung them while they were still dripping wet. Water pooled on the floor. Her downstairs neighbor started banging on the ceiling because water was leaking through. She said, "It's just laundry." The neighbor said, "It's just my ceiling." She had to wring out her clothes first. She didn't know that was a step. Someone in Oslo complained that his clothes smelled weird after air drying. I asked if he opened a window for ventilation. He said no. I said that's why. Clothes need airflow to dry properly, or they get musty. He said, "In America, the dryer handles that." I said, "In Europe, the window handles that." He said, "I'm not opening a window in winter." Then enjoy musty clothes. A guy in Athens hung his underwear on the balcony railing facing a busy street. His host asked him to move it to the inside line. He said, "Why? It's faster in the sun." The host explained it's not polite to display underwear to the public. He said, "It's just underwear. Everyone has it." The host said, "Yes, but we don't all want to see yours." He moved it, but left a bad review saying the host was controlling. Another woman in Brussels tried to speed dry her dress by waving it around in the air like a flag. She did this for 20 minutes. Her roommate watched and finally said, "That's not going to work." She said, "It's evaporating the water." The roommate said, "You're just exercising." She hung it up normally after that. A guy in Copenhagen used a hairdryer on his wet shirt for 40 minutes. The shirt dried. His arm got tired. His electricity bill was insane. His host saw the bill and asked what happened. He said, "I dried my shirt." The host said, "With what? A flamethrower?" He said, "A hairdryer." The host explained that's wildly inefficient. He said, "But it worked." The host said, "So does waiting. I also saw someone in Krakow hang wet clothes directly on wooden furniture. The wood got water stains. The host charged her for damages. She said, "It's just water. It'll dry." The host said, "Wood absorbs water. This is permanent." She said, "How was I supposed to know that?" The host said, "Life experience. Let's talk about detergent. You'd think soap is universal. It's not. European detergent is concentrated. The bottles are small. The instructions are in multiple languages. Americans see the tiny bottles and think they're travel size. They use way too much. Chaos. A woman in Paris used half a bottle of detergent for one load. The machine overflowed with bubbles. It looked like a foam party. Bubbles came out from under the door. She opened the door mid-cycle and bubbles exploded into the room. She screamed. I came running. She said, "The machine is possessed." I turned it off and asked how much soap she used. She showed me the bottle. It was half empty. I said, "You only need one capful." She said, "The bottle is so small." I said, "Because it's concentrated." She said, "How was I supposed to know?" The label that says concentrated is a clue. A guy in Prague bought laundry detergent from a store but couldn't read Czech. He grabbed a bottle with a picture of clothes on it. Turns out it was fabric dye. He washed his white clothes with blue dye. Everything turned light blue. He came to me asking why his clothes changed color. I looked at the bottle. I said, "This is dye." He said, "I thought it was soap." I said, "Did you read the label?" He said, "I can't read Czech." I said, "Google Translate exists." He rewashed everything 5 times. His clothes stayed blue. Another guy in Rome used dish soap in the washing machine because he couldn't find laundry detergent. I already mentioned this earlier, but it happens constantly. Dish soap creates way more bubbles than laundry soap. The machine flooded. He tried to mop it up with towels. That made it worse. He asked if we had a wet vacuum. We did not. He spent 2 hours cleaning bubbles. He said, "This would never happen in America." I said, "If you used dish soap in an American machine, the same thing would happen." He said, "Maybe." A woman in Barcelona used dryer sheets in a washing machine. Dryer sheets are for dryers. She threw 3 sheets in with her clothes and ran the wash. Her clothes came out covered in waxy residue. She rewashed them. Still waxy. She asked me what went wrong. I asked what she used. She showed me dryer sheets. I explained those are for dryers, not washers. She said, "They're both for laundry." I said, "They're for different stages of laundry." She said, "That's confusing." It's really not. Someone in Amsterdam used laundry pods for the first time. She didn't realize you're supposed to put the pod in the drum with the clothes. She put it in the detergent drawer. The pod didn't dissolve properly. It got stuck. The machine beeped. She called maintenance. The guy opened the drawer and found a gummy, half-dissolved pod. He said, "Pods go in the drum." She said, "The drawer is for detergent." He said, "Liquid detergent, not pods." She argued that all detergent should go in the same place. He said, "Take it up with the manufacturer." A guy in Dublin used way too little detergent because he thought European machines were more efficient. He used 1 tiny drop for a full load. His clothes came out still smelling like sweat. He washed them again with another tiny drop. Same result. He finally asked the host. The host said, "How much are you using?" He showed her. She laughed. She said, "You need more than that." He said, "I'm trying to save money." She said, "You're also trying to smell clean." He used the proper amount after that. Another woman in Vienna bought detergent with a picture of a baby on it. She thought it was for delicate clothes. It was baby detergent. It's super mild. Her clothes didn't get clean. She complained to the store. The store clerk explained it's for baby clothes, which don't get that dirty. She said, "Why would they make weak detergent?" The clerk said, "For babies with sensitive skin." She said, "I don't have a baby." The clerk said, "Then don't buy baby detergent." A guy in Brussels used bleach on colored clothes because he thought bleach was just strong detergent. His clothes came out with white splotches. He said the washing machine ruined his clothes. The host asked what he used. He said, "Just bleach." The host said, "Bleach is only for white clothes." He said, "I thought bleach made things cleaner." The host said, "It makes things whiter." That's different. He left a review saying the host should provide better instructions. The bottle of bleach had instructions on it. Someone in Stockholm mixed 2 different types of detergent together because she thought it would make them more powerful. It created a weird chemical smell. Her clothes smelled like a swimming pool. She rewashed them with just water. They still smelled like chemicals. She had to buy new detergent and wash them 3 more times. She told me this was the worst laundry experience of her life. I said, "Don't mix chemicals." She said, "I thought it would help." I said, "Mixing things randomly never helps." A woman in Athens used hand soap in the washing machine because she ran out of detergent. Hand soap is not the same as laundry soap. Her clothes came out sticky and didn't rinse properly. She hung them up and they dried stiff like cardboard. She asked if Greek water was different. I said, "No, hand soap is different." She said, "Soap is soap." For the 100th time, soap is not soap. Different soaps have different formulas for different purposes. A guy in Berlin didn't realize fabric softener was optional. He thought it was required. He used fabric softener but no detergent. His clothes came out soft but dirty. He said the machine didn't work. I asked what he used. He showed me fabric softener. I said, "Where's the detergent?" He said, "Isn't this detergent?" I said, "No, this makes clothes soft. You need actual detergent to clean them." He said, "Why are there 2 bottles?" I said, "Because they do different things." He said, "America has 1 bottle that does both." I said, "Then use that next time." I want to end with my favorite laundry story of all time. A guy in Florence rented an apartment for 2 weeks. The apartment had a washer-dryer combo unit. That's a machine that washes and dries in one. He didn't realize it did both. He washed his clothes, took them out wet, hung them up, and then complained that the dryer didn't work. The host explained it was a combo unit. He said, "What's a combo unit?" The host said, "It washes and dries automatically." He said, "Then why are my clothes wet?" The host said, "Did you select the dry cycle?" He didn't. He just ran the wash and stopped. He'd been doing this for 10 days. He could have had dry clothes the entire time. He left a review saying the instructions weren't clear. The manual was in English. He didn't read it. That's the thing about laundry abroad. The machines work. The systems work. But if you don't read the instructions or ask questions, you're going to have a bad time. And I get it. Laundry shouldn't be complicated. But every country does things a little differently. Machine sizes, soap types, drying methods, even water temperature. It all varies. Americans are used to big machines, fast cycles and dryers that finish everything in an hour. That's fine. But when you travel, you have to adapt. You can't force your system onto someone else's country. You can't leave 1-star reviews because a machine doesn't work like your machine at home. You have to learn. And honestly, most of this could be avoided by just asking. Ask the host. Ask the front desk. Ask another guest. People are usually happy to explain, but so many people don't ask. They just assume it works the same way as home. Then they flood a laundry room with bubbles, or shrink all their clothes, or hang wet towels on the TV. I've been working in hostels and hotels for 6 years. I've seen every possible laundry disaster. I've mopped up bubbles. I've explained detergent drawers. I've demonstrated how to open washing machine doors. I've shown people what a drying rack is. And I'll keep doing it, because these stories never stop coming. The world is full of different systems. Laundry is just one of them, but it's a good reminder that what's normal for you isn't normal everywhere. And that's okay. Travel is about learning. Sometimes you learn by making mistakes. Sometimes you learn by accidentally dyeing all your clothes blue or creating a bubble tsunami. So next time you're abroad and you see a washing machine that looks like a spaceship control panel, take a breath. Read the labels. Ask for help. Don't just start pressing buttons and hope for the best. Your clothes will thank you. The cleaning staff will thank you. And you'll have one less disaster story to tell, or don't. Keep making mistakes.